Hello and welcome to the Temple Tinker Tavern. I am Jim, aka Urgent Wind, and I am your dungeon. Well, I'm a dungeon master here on our channel, but I'm here to host your DM&D with you today, the show where we talk about all things running role-playing games. And this week we're talking about we call this the next generation. A lot of times we have to introduce new players to the game, young and old, all that maybe friends, maybe coworkers, maybe other people that have just kind of come to you and saying, "Hey, what is this D&D thing? How do I play?" So we're going to talk about some things, some strategies to kind of get them involved, to kind of introduce it, and some ways to describe it, and then we're going to look at some ways to this to run for those new players. Some things to keep in mind when you're running the games for them, and how to encourage them to continue playing, because we want to bring people that are going to be here with us for the long haul. Um, so let's say typical scenario: you're at a party, you're out someplace, maybe you're talking to coworkers, and they go, "Hey, what is this D&D thing?" Now, you don't want to launch into this massive description of all the everything about like how to make characters, what it is. The basic thing you want to describe, and this is how I tell people what I tell people all the time, is that D&D or other role-playing games are an interactive storytelling experience where you get to play a character in a story. And you have some friends that are playing other characters in that story. And there's somebody, the dungeon master or game master, depending on there, who is basically helping you guide you through the plot of that story, playing all the characters that aren't you and your friends. So a basic description like that, or some variation of that, will kind of get them idea of like, oh wow, I get to play as a character in a story. That sounds fun. So at that point, they may go, okay, that sounds interesting. How do you play? Well, this is where again, you don't want to launch into, well, here's what the character sheet does, and you have this, and you do blah, 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 blah. Just settle into saying, hey, you're going to be playing a character. And so you'll have a character sheet with some abilities and skills on it and ways to use that character to interact with the story. And depending on the genre, you might have things like, I'm good at swinging a sword. I'm good at casting spells. I'm good at shooting a gun. I'm good at hacking computers. Depending on depending on the genre you're talking about for the game there. But the idea that you want to tell them that you're playing a character in a story, typical, appropriate for the genre of the story you're in. And there's going to be some form of character sheet with stats and abilities that help you figure out how you interact with the story. And at that point, there, if you kind of hook them into that, saying, "Hey, I'm interested," and how often do you play? Well, again, depends on the game. Might be once a week for a few hours. It might be once a month for a few hours. Typical sessions are this. And so again, you don't want to overwhelm them, and you don't want to say, "Hey, you're going to be playing for 6 hours, 3 or 4 nights a week." I mean, granted, some of us do that, but that brand new player is going to be like, "That's too much for me." So ease them into it. Ease them into the description of what you're telling them and give them a taste of it. If you have the opportunity to maybe run a simple one shot at a party or on a night with some friends who maybe some are new to the game, some are maybe not new to the game, and bring in the new player gradually to the system. And if they're hooked, they're going to want to play more. They're going to want to see come back for another session or jump into a campaign. I've seen many, many times where someone who's really sure about it at first just absolutely has a great time and just dives head first. And they're in games and now they're playing. And then eventually, if they really are into it, we've got ourselves a new DM and they want to try running their own game. So it's about encouraging that interest, about bringing somebody in. And the last thing we want to do is push someone away from a game. Um, so again, just that gradual ease them in there, simple descriptions, answer their questions in fairly short bursts, and let them sort of get eased into it. Now, when it comes to the actual games themselves, when they're first into the game, be aware they're not going to know how to role play. Some may take to it very easily, If they have some sort of they're interested in like they did theater, they're theater nerds from high school, or they're interested into improv or anything else like that, they may take to that role playing very quickly, or they may need to be encouraged. So rather than expecting them to do everything in those first few sessions of the game, have a few questions in your back pocket. Have a few ways of encouraging role play in your back pocket. Some very simple ones are, I'm playing a fighter, I'm going to swing my sword at him. Turn, as they say, okay, well, go ahead and, before you have them roll, say, what does that look like? What kind of sword strike are you going to do? Are you swinging for his head? Are you going to stab him in the gut? Or are you going to try to dance around him, swinging wildly, nicking him with 1,000 cuts? Anything to kind of give them an idea that there's a description in mind here. There's a visualization that goes along with what they're doing. Their actions can be customized to their own style, what they want to describe in the plot. And then once they give that description, then have them roll the dice and see how well it works out. So same thing with like role playing encounter, like RP encounter, where it's not combat based, but then let's say you have some new players and they're approaching a guard at a gate to a town. And rather than just saying, "What do you do?" is that as you approach the gate, the guard kind of stands at attention or narrows his eyes at you and looks at you and says, "What do you want?" Now the idea that they have a chance to interact. They might turn around and just say, "Well, I want to convince the guard to let us inside." So rather than just saying, "Okay, roll persuasion." At that point, ask them, "Okay, what do you tell? What do you say to him? What actions do you take?" And so they also they go, "Okay, I'm gonna tell them that we're adventurers and that we're looking to help and looking to make some money." Okay, at that point, you might say, "Okay, that makes sense. Now roll for persuasion." Now you know what they're doing, and you get an idea of what kind of interaction they're going to have with this person. And rather than saying, "Oh, well, you're going to fail or you're going to succeed," think about what it means to roll low or roll high in this situation. And the guard might be, "Sure, yeah, you can come in, but we keep your eyes on you." They roll low, and we don't take kindly to people causing trouble around here. So if you cause any problems, they're going to come down hard on you. Go on inside. Or if they roll really well, I'm like, "Oh, adventurers, well, good, good. Well, taverns that way. You can find some people to talk to over there." Or if they roll really, really high, they might say, "Hey, you know what? The guard post over here, they always looking for work. They always see people like go out and like find lost kittens and track down bad guys or deal with bandits on the road. Talk with those guys. They may have some work for you." So again, at that point though, if you play in character, it will encourage them to play in character. And so then instead of saying, "Well, I thank the guard when I go in," they might just turn around and say, "Oh, well, thank you, appreciate it," and then go inside. Suddenly they're role playing, and you've gotten that role play encounter from just a few sentences, from just a few encouraging demonstrations of how to role play. Because it's not going to be really obvious at first. So just that little bit right there, you've now hooked them into playing a character, to interacting with NPCs, making decisions about what they do and how it might affect the situation. And so that is how you can, once you got them in the door, they've got a character sheet in front of them. How do you keep them interested? Well, this is one way to do that, is to show them what the role playing aspects of the game are. Now, if they're really into the combat, liven up the combat. Don't just, "Yeah, you rolled a hit. Yeah, you hit do so much damage here." Describe the hits, describe the damage, describe the actions and the flow of what's happening. Because most people, when they first sit down, they're kind of like, "Okay, I rolled an 18. Is that good? Okay. Oh yeah, you strike really, really hard. The guy tries to dodge out of the way, but you just compensate and nail him across the ribs." At that point, "Oh wow, okay. Roll for damage." Ooh, didn't roll very high on damage there. So he manages to just barely get out of the way, and you nick across there, causing a line of blood to appear, but not a heavy damage, not a heavy wound. And so it becomes less about the numbers and the rolls and more about the scene and the story. Because again, we are telling a story together. So, and this is something that not every DM is going to be really comfortable with themselves, But over time, you can develop the skill. And when you're bringing in new players and new people to the game, it gets them into the mindset of, yeah, I'm playing a character in a story. This is great. And that's going to draw them in and keep them coming back. It isn't about the dice mechanics. It isn't about the modifiers and the stats and the skills and the leveling up, which is a big part of the game. And they should experience that over time. But it's not going to, that is what brings them into the game and keeps them there. It's that chance to role play, to tell that story, to be a part of a world and do some fun, crazy, amazing stuff. Okay. Now, I had an experience very recently where I was running for my youngest and three of their friends. First time they're playing D&D. They're all teenagers, at the time, ages 13 to 16. And none of them, they all knew what D&D was, had never played it. And so I had the chance to introduce this to them. And I will say this, when you're bringing in brand new players that are young, you need to keep in mind a different audience. Now, they may be fine with describing gory, crazy, terrible things, but you want to really find out where their comfort levels are, and you don't want to hit them with everything all at once. Now, my kiddos, within a few sessions, they were like, we want eldritch horror, we want terrible things. Okay, well, we'll ease that into the story. But I didn't lead with that. They had sort of some simple little adventures, a little dungeon crawl, eventually dealing with some undead stuff and everything else. And so it was a chance to kind of ease them into that high danger fantasy, but then seeing the cool, fantastic elements of the world, like seeing dragons for the first time and not being attacked by it, but like just seeing it and being able to talk to it. So with those younger age players, you kind of want to ease them into that kind of thing. You don't want to just throw the horrible stuff at them right away. But even younger players, you may want to be careful of having heavy combat. The idea of killing animals or killing other people to like players that are maybe like 10 or so, that might be a little bit too much for them. So think about ways of describing combat that's less intense, less maybe have combat, but the idea of rather than blood and gore and guts and everything else like that, just like, yeah, you knock him out, he falls over, and you won the day. So the idea that you're not going overboard with things that are a little bit too adult or too intense for them, or even just having scenarios that don't involve combat at all. Having hide and seek scenarios, having scavenger hunt scenarios, or having ways of like rescuing lost kids or lost pets or whatever else like that, where maybe they're not using weapons to do it, but they're using like magic or blunt weapons or things like that, where they kind of bop things over the head and get them to run away. Where instead of killing the wolves or killing the big things that are putting their fellow kids in danger, they're just scaring them off. So that's a really good way of easing the kids into the idea of combat, where maybe the combat isn't about killing the things, but it's scaring them, driving them off, or just knocking them unconscious so they can take care of what they need to do and move on. So, again, bringing kids in, and those kids, I'll tell you right now, my teens that I play with there, within about 6 months of them playing, one of the players, they started running their own game for the teens on other nights other days that wasn't running, and now they've actually gone on to play with another one of the dads is now running a game, running a different game for them, with all new characters in a new world, and they're having a great time with it. But they're invested. They play every single week. They're all and they talk about their characters in the off time and plan things, and it's great to see. But we have a new generation of gamers out of nowhere. We've growing your own, as they say sometimes. So, some other things to keep in mind when you're bringing in new players, and we have a lot of that right now on Tumble Tanker. We have some new players showing up, and we have openings in certain games. And so, as you bring in a new person into the game, into an existing game, and we've talked about this a little bit in the past here, but I wanted to bring it up in here too, is that if you have a brand new player to your community, maybe brand new to your circle of friends, or a friend who didn't play before who wants to get into it now, It's a way of easing them into an existing campaign. You have to think there's things you need to keep in mind. A, you want to make sure they're comfortable with they know who their character is and what kind of character they want to play. And and then talk with them about that character to make sure it's going to fit with the campaign. If you're bringing in a character who's going to be a goody two shoes and they're all a bunch of like murder hobos, that might cause some friction right off the bat, or vice versa. They're all goody two shoes and they want to bring in someone who's a dark, brooding edge lord character who wants to see their enemies die. Well, that may not work in a character in a game where the players are all playing heroes. So help them guide them into a character that's going to fit with the party dynamic you've already got. Now you can introduce some conflict or introduce some like rivalry into the game, of course. That can be fun to play out too. But bringing a character in that's completely the opposite of what the rest of the party is going to be a recipe for trouble. Unless you have really experienced players, but even then, it's going to set you up for some pretty difficult situations down the road. But so bringing in a new player into an existing game there, help them A with a character that's going to fit with the party, and then B give them enough knowledge of what's happening in the world, what they know about the world, and maybe about the party themselves. If they may have heard of the party, if they're the famous adventurers, they may have heard of them or seen them around. They may have fellow allies, and that's the way to bring in their way. We can introduce the party through somebody else, through an NPC the party already knows and trusts. Just to have them walk up out of the blue saying, I'm joining your party. Who are you? Go away. Whereas, hey, this guy's a cool person. They can help you out. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm out of here. So now the party at least is introduced and they have someone in common. They have something in common. And so I've used that a number of times in my games, and we've had another number of players kind of come and go. And I find that's probably one of the easiest ways to bring somebody in. Now you can just have somebody like show up out of the blue, and there's another great scenario is essentially the party's in the middle of combat, having somebody show up, swoop in to help them, and they help dispatch someone, or even better, like save somebody from being killed as they move into the last minute and blast the guy and knock him away from the person who's going to finish off one of the party members. Then now suddenly they have a way to be introduced in that way, in a more action-oriented way. Or if the party is being more proactive, saying, hey, we need to go hire somebody. Let's go find someone. Let's go check out what the Thieves Guild is, or let's go check out what the Wizards Guild and see if there's a wizard for hire. Our wizard left or got killed. Let's find a new one. So in that case, you might bring in a new player by having the party go and recruit them. So another fun way to do that. So any way you can make it plausible for a reason why the party would why the person would join the party, giving the new player enough knowledge that they at least have an idea of what's going on. To just show up and say, "Here I am. What's happening?" Well, that's not a lot to go on when you first join a game. So again, prepping that new person with some knowledge, about the game, prepping them with a character that's going to work with the rest of the party, and then checking in. You may need to check in with the party, saying, how's this going? Is this working out? Or checking with the new player, saying, hey, are you having fun? What do you think? Is this going here? And so that's something you want to do with your players in general, but especially with your brand new players. People that have never played before, talk to them. See what that feedback is. Say, what are you enjoying? What are you not enjoying? What can I do to make this more fun for you? And for a player new to the existing campaign, again, is your character working out for you? Anything you want to tweak? Anything you want to change based on now that you know what's here and you see what's going on? Is there something that's just not working for you? Be open to letting them change and modify things because they're just coming into a new scenario. So whether you're brand new players, brand new games, or new players to existing games here, there are some things to keep in mind. Some other situations where you have new players. Maybe you're a new DM and you're working with new players here. This is where this is kind of that crazy situation of like, I'm running my first game. I got people who never played before. We don't know what we're doing. This is where it's really important to communicate, even more so than anything. And being aware you're going to make mistakes. You're not going to be perfect. No DM is perfect. No player is always on top of everything. It's not a thing. So the idea of being open to having that feedback that, hey, what's going on? What's working? What's not working? Are we still having fun? Cool. Anything we want to change? Great. So have that time with that. If you're a new DM, especially, and if you're with a bunch of new players, have that time. Either plan either before or even better, sometimes after a game is done, saying, hey, we're all finished here. So what do you think? How are we doing? Are we all having fun? Anything we want to change? Do you think it's not going well? And that way it's all fresh in your mind and they can kind of think about it there. So that communication piece is essential to continuing a campaign, to making sure that everyone is engaged and having fun. Um, and yes, I will say, kids do say and do the darndest things. You never know. I mean, new players in general can do the unexpected, but I will say, my teens and things I've heard of in other kids' games, you never know what's going to come out of their mouths or what crazy ideas they're going to have because they don't have the experience that other people do with the genre, the style of play, anything else that say, can I do this? And here's an important thing to keep in mind, especially with new players. You don't want to shut them down. Err on the side of, yeah, err on the side of, especially on the side of yes and. Sure, you can do that. Here's what's going to happen when that does. And so it's really important you don't just say, oh, that's against the rules. You can't do that. That's really discouraging to someone to say, or when you shut them down and give them this whole thing of like, well, here's how the rules work. In that moment, when they come up with that great idea, that crazy chaotic thing, they want to tame the dire wolf, they want to throw a fireball to light the torches on top of a roof and not burn the whole place down. They want to do some crazy um uh maneuver with their acrobatics and martial arts and weapons and anything else that. Let them do it. Encourage that. And then if it's something that's like, hey, this is not going to work in the future, after things kind of go other and you get a chance to kind of think "Hey, that was really cool, but here's how that works in the game. Here's how the rules work here. So in the future, we're going to do it this way. But it was great. I want to see more of that, but here's how we're going to make sure it works within the rules. But you're not doing that during game and discouraging it. 'Cause the last thing you want to see is that they have that moment of excitement, the fires in their eyes, and you shut it down with up, not against the rules. That's against the rules, doesn't work. You're going to see that just drain out of them. Um, and so i- keeping that in mind, where like they do that crazy thing, they do that thing that's not technically in the rules. Let it happen. Encourage that fun, chaotic, spur of the moment inspiration that they have, and then dial it back. Or let's say the next time they try it, then figure out a way that, yeah, that works. But here's what's going to end up happening in the case. So eventually you can kind of dial them back into that crazy maneuver worked one time, but it's not going to work every time. Or that 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 inspiring but against the rules way that spell worked in the moment worked there, but in the future, here's how it's going to work. So you can work on that fun thing there, or they may come up and say, "Hey, that's cool. We're going to put it in the game there. That's the way it's going to work from here on out." You may those those chaotic, crazy, brand new players can be a great source of inspiration for house rules. I I did it with my teens where they had this idea of we had the druid player who wanted to basically fight in bear form, and I'm like, okay, cool. And they looked at me and said, well, I've got flame blade. What happens if I have flame blade and I turn into a bear? And I went, your claws are on fire. You're a flaming clawed bear now. Awesome. And that kind of became something that is possible where you could maintain. I mean, we all know that druids can maintain their stone skin, but maintaining flame blade, that's something that's. I mean, you can either have like maybe they turn into a monkey who's actually wielding a sword of fire, but maybe they're Maybe they train a dire wolf and they got flaming jaws and they now add fire damage to their bite attack. Again, that moment of, can I do this? Sure, why not? That's how it's going to work from here on out. So that those moments of inspiration, those moments of creativity are things you need to really foster and encourage, because new players that get a chance to do that are going to find new fun ways of being creative, and they're going to want to continue doing it. So the more you encourage it, the more those players are going to come back to the table, the more they're going to want to keep playing week after week, year after year, and then eventually maybe become DMs themselves, where now they have a chance to run their own games and see how people do things when they're the ones in charge of the story. So, let's see. Do we have folks? Yeah, I don't think we have anyone watching out there currently. So, if you're watching this in the future, hopefully you are. We may run this a little bit short for the moment here, but um, as all, just to kind of put this out here, as always, if you have questions or you have ideas for new games, feel free to throw them either in the comments of this video, or on the Tumble Tankard, or if you're in contact with people from the Tumble Tankard on other social media platforms, throw something our way. We're always looking for new topics of discussion here. And I want to I had to think about this here. I believe this topic did come from my kid's new DM, David Jackson. If you're out there watching, good job here. He asked about like how to get kids involved with games. Um, and I'm going to pivot a little more back into that right now, because I've had the opportunity to run for some teens. I know Nans has run kids games as well. Um, but I had the experience recently of, typically before my games on Saturday, I end up going to a coffee shop and hanging out for a little bit and writing down notes and thinking about the game I'm going to run here and enjoying some coffee and stuff. But one of the coffee places I go to um, has tables set up when on certain days people can come in there and use those tables to play D&D or play Magic or whatever else they're going to play. And for a good probably month or so, every Saturday I went to the coffee shop in the morning, there would be a couple and their kids, and another mom and her kid, and another mom and her kid, and the mom would just kind of watch in that case. But in the case of, they were running the games for their kids, and the parents were helping them with the die rolls. And, okay, you want to roll this now? Okay, cool. But the kids got to make the decisions, and the stories were so cute. They were it had a very much One Piece feel. They were basically pirates on a ship there. They were stealing stuff from other ships, but they didn't have any real weapons. They just had they like fired. They had like, it was almost like they were pillow fighting with their weapons and knocked people unconscious or knocked people overboard. Um, but they got to steal ships and find treasure. But no, but then they were all just these goofy little like uh um just pirate characters who were just trying to steal things from other pirate ships and land on one week they were landed on a desert island, and they were looking for buried treasure on the island and had to go follow the map and figure out the clues, and it was super cute, and the kids just had a great time. And the parents were there mostly to help them with the die rolls and kind of keep them on task a little bit there, and there was about four kids there playing. But that's the kind of thing. And ages were basically, I would say, probably 6 to 10, maybe. So pretty young. So something to keep in mind is that you can use a lot of these games, and with some simple little tweaks, bring them something more appropriate for younger kids there. They still are using skills and stats and die rolls and everything else like that. But instead of the intense, gory, powerful combat, they reskinned a lot of it to be less lethal, less crazy, and put them in scenarios where they were, rather than killing all the rats in the dungeon, they were trying to capture them and put them in bags to take them out and release them back into the wild. That's the idea that they weren't trying to squish them, or that they were trying to like push them into their bags and pick them up with their hands and try to hold them and get them outside. And so just that little change of, instead of having to hit them with a weapon, they were literally trying to scoop them up or capture them or whatever else. And it made for a really cute, fun game. It didn't involve a lot of over the top um, combat and an unfortunate bloodshed and everything else, that which is not really appropriate for little kids. But it's a way to kind of foster that fun role playing experience, even in little kids who are just totally into like running around. I want to grab this guy. Cool, do it. Roll the dice. And so it was fun to watch them. And so if you ever have a chance to either help with a kids game or run a kids game, I highly recommend it. And there are some other systems out there that are a little more kid friendly. There's Kids on Bikes. Um, for teenage games. It's a good time there. There is a My Little Pony role playing game that has some great ways of playing ponies in the land of Equestria. And there's a lot of other fun, like kid oriented games. You're finding more and more out there. So there that you've seen, throw them into the comments here, and for some folks in the future. Um, but I think we're going to wrap things up here pretty soon. Make sure there's no one else popping in here. No, I think we're good. Okay. Um, So unless Nans, you have a question to throw at me, I'm gonna put you on the
We
spot here. Go
just
ahead.
no, you're good. Like, how did you find materials to help them build their character sheets?
Oh, okay. Um, that's such a good question. So I actually used I did end up using a system called Critical Core, which was designed to work with new kids, kids maybe that might be challenges like autism or ADHD, anxiety, and things like that. It really had a lot of elements in that critical core system for fostering role playing, how to create encounters to encourage role play instead of just straight up combat and everything else. And the character sheets there, those actually came with character sheets pre-made. And then as it went on, I kind of helped tweak the character sheet. I used my PDF skills to modify the stuff that's on there, and eventually we turn them into straight up fifth ed characters as we progress through the story a ways. But uh, in that case, sometimes a lot of these games will have like pre-made character sheets for you, so that so you can just kind of either print them out and hand them to the kids, or you can find I've seen online some character sheets for certain systems that are designed to be a little more cutesy, a little bit more streamlined, with less information on them for the kids for kids to use. So don't be afraid. And if you're playing in person, which some of these games might be in person, if you have a chance like that, having just a print out a simple little character sheet and make it so it's all right there for them, so you can have point of saying, yeah, see right there, that's your pillow attack, or that's your spell over there, and so they can have all that on one simpler sheet. So it maybe you need to modify it in Word or Publisher or just some sort of a PDF manipulator, or you can find resources online for finding simplified sheets that are more appropriate for kids. Um, so good question though. It it there's a lot out there, and depending on the system you find, again, they may have pre-made sheets, pre-made characters is also a good way to go, helping them build their character so they actually have a way to like I want to make this kind of character. And with kids especially, if they say I want to play Ash from Pokemon, cool, help them build that. I want to play Luffy from One Piece, cool, make them help them build that. And so don't just say, oh, that doesn't fit in this world. Work on ways to bring that in there. So they again, it helps them role play because they've seen the character in action in their shows, and now they have an idea of how to play the character themselves. So, or they something that's like them, and so be inspired by a character that they know and can act out that way if they want in the game that they're playing in. So, a couple things there to keep in mind for those little kiddos.
Yeah, I had them on the Roll 20
Hmm.
VTT, which was really nice because they had access to my compendiums, which you know how big my compendiums are.
They're
I
crazy.
did shrink, yeah, I did shrink it so that it was just the PHP.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
do you think that we could even shrink it even further to help them understand the rules a little bit better on as far as creating the character goes?
You may consider. So I would consider the idea of instead of just handing the keys of the castle. I mean, even just the PHP, helping them with like rather than making them go through it themselves and then guiding them through it yourself. So so that you can say, oh, you want to play this type of a character. Well, here let's go through it together and build it out for you. Make sure all the boxes are checked that need to be checked and everything else like that. And so that way, rather than like hand again, depending on the age of the kid and the maturity level and everything else, you could eventually just say, hey, here's a spell book. Have fun. Which spells do you want to cast? Um, there are some one if you are working with kids playing spellcasters, I do highly recommend. Where are they? I should have that over here. Uh, Going ahead and getting the spell cards. If you're playing D&D, you can find these spell cards, or you can find ones online to print out. But that way, you can say, "Hey, rather than looking up the spells in the book, here's a stack of cards. Go ahead and figure out which spells you've got, and it's got all the information they need on it. Um, and that way, this will help them if they go through a whole book of things like that. They can go, "Oh, I've got this spell and this spell. Okay, cool. I'll cast that one of those." So again, it's ways of kind of making it easier on them. And when it comes to helping them create their characters, rather than giving them all the options, ask them, what do you want to do? I want to throw fire. Okay, well, here's some fire spells here. Let's pick out the ones that are going to work best for you. And just guide them that way. So rather than making them pick specific spells, ask them what kind of things do they want to do. I want to be able to shoot a bow. Okay, well, here's some archery based things to keep in mind. And that way, it's not just this like deluge of information and try to figure out what you want. Have some suggestions for based on what ask them what they want to do and then help them guide them to some ways to make that happen because they're not going to be, especially little kids, they're not going to be interested in optimized builds or min max stuff here. They just want to know what do I roll and how does it work. Yeah. Yeah.
We, we had tons of fun. We built my daughters on Roll20, but the other kids in the group that I ran with, we
Hmm.
built it on D&D Beyond, and it
Hmm.
seemed that that was an easier system for them to pick up and use than Roll20 would be.
Yeah. I we use Beyond with my teens when they transitioned from critical core characters to fifth characters.
Hmm.
Um, and the character builder in Beyond has a very good step by step approach, where here you do this, now you do this, now you do your racial stuff, now you do your ability scores, now you do your class ability stuff. Um, and it has check boxes for what needs to be filled in or what's still missing. So it's a little bit easier than some other. I've never been a fan of Character Mancer in Roll20, but I think it's partially because I didn't have all the resources that that you and other people do. So
Hmm.
I couldn't make the characters I wanted to make. All of
Right.
my resources were in Beyond. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and so again, depending on the age level, the maturity level, there it might be a situation where you kind of have to guide them through it. And then once they've in it for a little bit there, they can kind of go in and tweak it themselves and figure it out. But yeah, it kind of comes down to knowing your players, knowing who they are, and erring on the side of offering more help initially, and then eventually they may kind of get into their own as they move on.
I think our session zero, they already had what kind of characters they wanted to play. They were more interested in what their characters looked like and playing around on the computer to get me picture art for their
Hmm.
character sheets.
Yeah,
That was a good half hour, 45-minute discussion with each individual player. So,
yeah.
uh, you know, when you were describing like what kind of character you do want to play, they were describing what their character looked like, not what their characters were
Oh
doing.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
it,
my
it, uh,
kiddo, yeah, they had artwork for their character before the first session. They'd already drawn out their character, and they already knew what they were going to play. So,
mhm.
and then other characters had a little bit more conceptually, and some kind of went with like, hey, I like this picture. This is what I want to do. What I want to look like. So you're going to have varying levels of that, but depending on like the skills and maturity of your kiddos and such. Um,
Did your kiddos go into backstory?
a bit. I didn't do a lot. I sort of like kind of get little things and saying, okay, what kind of ideas did you want to have based on your character class, based on doing the background a bit there? And it's sort of like, well, based on that, I'm going to put you on this part of the map, and you're from here, and this is what it's like. And then I sort of did in session zero, I said, okay, well, you guys are going to all be arriving here. Describe to me how you got there. And so the two of the characters went, well, we met up on the road over here because he was traveling this way and I was going this way, and we ran into each other, and neither of us are any good at camping because he had no survival skill. And so we kind of like kept each other alive kind of by like bumbling through it and figuring out our ways there and getting lost a bunch of times. And then the other two characters showed up. There was a druid and the rogue, who had survival skills and grew up in the forest and grew up in the wild. Like, so I was like, so I kind of went, well, the four of you ran into each other there as you guys were starving to death, and these guys were showing up going, what are these guys doing? And so they kind of came together. So they kind of, as a group, along with me, we kind of figured out like would you meet here or you meet? So when we met outside of town, we were having trouble. We got lost, and so that kind of became a little bit of the group dynamic as well. These two were the more competent ones when it came to like the outdoorsy stuff, and these two were the more. This was the cleric and the bard. Bard good at talking people. The druid was not good at talking to people, and so they kind of figured out what skills complemented each other, and then that became sort of like the basis of, okay, well, you guys have arrived in town, and you're here at this tavern and um, looking for something to eat, and skeletons attack. like, like what? Like skeletons bust down the front door and like attack while you're in here. What's going on? So yeah, it was like then the big mystery ensued, and then helping the
Right.
shopkeeper and doing all this other stuff. And so yeah, it was a good time. But
Uh,
that
would
yeah,
you, time permitting, run another kids game with not your own kids?
I would love to someday. Um, time permitting is the big thing there. It would be fun to try out some different things like that, even to do some like one shots or a short like mini series kind of a campaign, like maybe 5 or 6 sessions or so, depending on the scenario that they're in. Um,
Hmm.
I will say it is a little more difficult to run for other people's kids that you don't know.
Yep.
But the opportunity it can present itself there, and it's also trying to get an ongoing campaign when you don't have a real life connection or outside of an online scenario thing here. It can be as you ran into is people showed up and then stopped showing up, and
Hmm.
in this case, I had the skill that I had the one up is that um uh my kiddo and one of the other players, they were very good friends. The brother was that her younger brother was there, and then another friend from school they all knew, and so that kind of became the core group. And they're still playing almost 2 years later now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it would be great. I would say I would probably try to run a very short campaign unless it goes well, and you can always run an episodic scenario of like, well, that adventure's done. You want to do more? Okay, well, here's another adventure. And you were kind of setting up some of that up for your fairy tale game.
I
That would have
was.
been yeah.
Yes. It was going to be like, here's Sleepy Hollow.
Sure.
Okay, did you have fun? Let's go into Cinderella. Did you
Sure.
have fun? Okay, and just keep going from that.
Yeah.
But things happened and
Yeah.
life happens and we move on.
Yep, it didn't and you now have game notes for something else to do in the future.
I
And that's
do.
yeah. I mean, I will say, like my first campaign, it only ran about 18 or 20 sessions or so totally for a couple of months. That was all
Hmm.
this book, and then that was 5 years later. I started up Avarice with you guys in the same world, using a lot of the same
Hmm.
notes. Kind of going from there. And so those that prep and that stuff that you do is never wasted. It's always a chance to kind of come back and recycle it and reuse it. Um,
Hmm.
and tweak it and change it and add more. But
Yeah.
yeah, alrighty. Well, I think we'll go ahead and one more person might be out there. I see three watching now. Who's out there? Stay high at least. Um, but just kind of recap a little bit there, and just so we know, again, when it comes to creating the next generation of gamers, you have there are a few different sources of of tapping that well of people that come to you, ask, they hear about the game, want to play. Maybe they know you play the game and they want to find out what it is. Encourage them to, again, don't make them drink from the fire hose. Just little bits of little tastes of what it's like, in describing the game, and then as they start playing there, encouraging them, giving them opportunities, letting them kind of feel their way into the game, and just find their footing and enjoy themselves without having to worry about, oh my god, I need to know all these rules. Oh my god, I need to know how to improv. I need to do like no, just let them settle in, let them enjoy their time, and encourage those moments where they can do that, and then just letting them kind of grow over time. And it's how you bring about a new generation of gamers and role playing gamers, especially, is that it's not something they just people just jump into and immediately take to. It takes some time, and they're gonna find things they love about it. There's things they may not love about it. Talk to them, communicate with them, find out what they do like, what they don't like, and encourage them to find those aspects and build on those aspects of things they like. And if they tell you they don't like certain things, try to work them out of the scenario. It doesn't hurt to remove the things they don't like. And because they're going to have more fun, and then you're going to have more fun as well. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you guys got some good information out there. If you're watching in the future, I hope you get a little more information. Again, if you have suggestions, drop in the comments here or send them to various places online. Lee, here we go. Um, okay. Any modules, pre-made modules that you can recommend? Um, Good question. I would say the for D&D, the Fandelver is a good starting basic dungeon there. You might need, if you're experienced with it, you might tweak it a little bit to kind of. I know the first time Miranda played there, they didn't want to kill the wolves. They didn't want to attack everything, and they didn't want to kill all the stuff there. So, like, find ways to kind of encourage that, scaring them off, driving them away, and um, but some other ones, classic modules are a great way to go because they're sort of a self-contained adventure. Is you can get your hands on the old D&D modules. They're basically kind of a dungeon crawl or a simple little adventure that has the whole setup and oftentimes even has like pre-made characters in the back that you can use if you want to just someone into here. So you can find some of these old things. You can find them online. You can find them in used sections of game stores. Uh, a lot of the campaign settings now are like full on like long running campaigns. So it's hard to kind of pare them down. But yeah, some of these things could be great ways to go. And you can find these old modules. Um, there are lots of places online you can find good adventures, especially kind of introductory adventures. Uh, I don't have any specific places I go to. I do all my own content, so I don't typically do commercial based modules anymore. Um, but again, finding systems that have simpler rule sets, or are set up for younger players. You can find those, again, specific systems for that. I'm trying to think here. Avatar does have a new Last Airbender. It has a brand new role playing game that's out there. Um, this is a kind of a cool thing there. You have people that are into this. Uh, if they're into Airbender, I would check this out here. Cool game, fairly simple mechanics. Interesting different ways to do things here. So definitely recommend that. What else we got out here? And just Yeah, I mean, Dungeon Masters Guild is a great place to go for like kid. They even have like search categories. I think kid friendly is a search category, or just going online searching for kid friendly RPGs or kid friendly ways to go here. I've seen lots of people having like different ways of creating a Pokemon based games for role playing games. We actually have a game on our a Temple Tinker here called Animon, which is sort of based on a sort of a Pokemon Digimon kind of thing like that. There was a homebrew system that was done through Kickstarter a while back. So again, there are definitely different ways, different sources of information out there. So I highly encourage you to kind of reach out online there and finding those things like that. Because I know they're out there. I haven't had to use them there. I did mention before Critical Core for those kids that may have a little more challenges, maybe with socially or cognitively, and just need help with that kind of thing. Critical Core is a great way to go there, and you can find that online as well. But other than that, um, yeah, I hope that helps. Thanks, there. Thanks, Lee. Good to see you. Um, Anything else? Okay. We are going to go ahead and wrap it up then. Again, thanks for being there. Thanks for the questions. Um, and I think, and Lee, this I think you were asking me offline a little bit about the setting up a kids game as well, and some ways to do that. So if you do go back and watch the video, we do talk about that a little bit more. Some modifiers, some ideas around that. So I hope that it helps out. But we are probably gonna. I haven't told Nance about this here. I'm probably gonna end up pushing back the time a little bit on the future sessions here, so it might be a little bit later. Maybe closer to like Pacific time instead of 5. My work schedule is making it a little bit hard to get here on time for a 5 o'clock start time here. So I'll make sure that's posted in future sessions and everything else, so we have that set up there. But I will say, as always, thank you for being here. If you are looking for new games, if you're looking for new players, if you're looking for a place just to hang out and talk games here, check out the Tumble Tankard. Our link is in the description below here to join our Discord. And hopefully we'll see you there. As always, the drinks are on us, and we can't wait to see you. We'll see you again really soon. Have fun.